My name is Nancy. I've always been a loner growing up, and even through high school, I looked at starting college as a brand new chapter in my life, where I could be anyone I wanted to be. It was a fresh start. I wanted to make new friends, get invited to parties, and even date some. Looking back retrospectively, I see how my immense desire for self transformation led me to make a couple bad choices, one being who I let into my life. The first semester at university, I ended up sharing a dorm with a girl who we will call Allison. The two of us hit it off immediately, and what drew me to her most was she was introducing me to the life I always wanted. She would stay up late talking to me, make me breakfast in the mornings, and just spend time hanging out. It felt great to have a best friend, and this was new for me. The first 2 months went great. Things didn't start declining until a week before midterms. Allison invited me multiple times to go hiking, watch a movie, or go to a party together, but my college algebra grade was already suffering, so I decided to decline the invitation and stayed at the campus library most nights to study. After I had gotten back to the dorm from a late night of studying, I found Allison waiting on the couch in the dark with an angry look on her face. She immediately accused me of spending time with someone else. I explained what I was doing, but apparently it wasn't good enough answer for her, because she just stormed out, leaving me confused to what had just happened. That night, I fell asleep on the couch after watching some Seinfeld to wake up to a flash. I thought it was a flash of lightning, so turned over and fell back to sleep. The next day, Allison made me breakfast and apologized for her behavior. I accepted and hoped we could just forget the incident. Allison grabbed her backpack and left to head to her 8 a.m. class. I got ready for class also, but decided to pack some snacks before leaving. I noticed Allison left her phone accidentally on the counter. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but had to take a look. When opening up her gallery, I was horrified to find an album solely comprised of candid pictures of me. It started with pictures of me walking to class, eating lunch, reading in the library. As I scrolled to more of the recently taken, they got worse and worse. There were photos of me sleeping, changing, and even somehow of being in the shower. I suddenly felt like throwing up at the realization I had no idea who my best friend was. I immediately called my parents, who contacted the police and the school for me to switch dorms. I think Allison realized what had happened, and I haven't heard from her since the incident occurred. I have since then gotten a good group of friends, plugged into the youth group and various clubs, but am very careful who I let into my inner circle. This story happened 20 odd years ago when I was 9. It was during the 90s, and rules were a lot more lax because of the different era. I had been trying to save money with odd and end jobs as a kid to buy a new bike. We didn't come from money, so I had been saving up my own cash for around 6 months to buy this bike, and just needed a little more to purchase it. My best friend and her dad lived at the end of our street. Her name's Miranda, and after school one day, Miranda mentioned her dad knew I needed some extra cash, so offered to let me clean the house or wash and fold the laundry to make some extra money. This news made me ecstatic, and I readily agreed and told Miranda I could come over tomorrow to do laundry or whatever chores they needed. Miranda's parents were divorced, and Miranda was spending the day with her mother, so I knocked on their door, and Miranda's dad, that we will call Mr. Perrins, let me inside. He was very polite and offered for me to wash the dishes and do a couple loads of laundry. I set off to work and got done with everything in about 2 hours. Told Mr. Perrins from the front door I was done, and was just about to head out when he jogged downstairs to give me some cash and gave me a long hug. He was rubbing my back, but at the time, being naive and feeling comfortable knowing this was my best friend's father, I didn't pay much attention. He offered for me to come back the following weekend, saying Miranda would be out of town, but he would have some extra chores. I readily agreed, and the following week knocked on their door once again. Mr. Perrins asked me to clean their bathroom and vacuum the floors, so I got to work. Being the early 90s, I had my parents' Walkman playing music in my ears while bending scrubbing the bathtub when I felt someone watching me. I turned around to find Mr. Perrins in the doorframe just watching me scrub. I took off the music, and he said that I was turning into a very beautiful woman. Again, my 9-year-old brain was mainly just flattered, and I just smiled and kept working. After a few minutes, Mr. Perrins came and asked me to pick up the laundry off of the master bedroom floor. As I went upstairs and into the room, I noticed clothes previously seeming folded were just tossed on the floor. I went to pick them up and heard the door close. I won't go into detail here, but at some point in this encounter, I ended up escaping and running back home crying, with my clothes ripped, to tell my parents everything that had happened. My father loaded his shotgun, ready to blast Mr. Perrins away, but my mother immediately called the police, who were at his house within 5 minutes. Mr. Perrins was arrested for child molestation and was also found to have child pornography. He is still in jail to this day, and Miranda moved to live with her mother a few hours away. I couldn't bring myself to ever see her again. She has written me a few times over the years with shock and sadness, apologizing for the man she hadn't realized her father was, but I just haven't been able to write her back until this week, which has spurred me to tell you this story as a cautionary tale. No matter how friendly someone may seem, always, always be careful. Usually I read and hear stories about experiences people had in their teens and 20s, but I'd wanted to share one that happened to me last year. I'm a 42-year-old man named Tom. As most of you know who are in the mature/middle-age years, after you finish college and settle into routine with career, family, and mortgage, it starts becoming increasingly difficult to make friends as easily as you did when you were kids. Of course, you meet people at parties and such, but not usually acquiring close friends you can do things with on a weekly basis. For me, this is where Lenny came into play. Back last spring, I had the unfortunate incident of losing my wife to an uphill battle with cancer. Up until that point, I had been in the trenches of depression, struggling with alcohol addiction, amongst other things, just to make it through the day. I realized this past summer the reality that it would have broken my wife's heart to see where I had gotten to, and I had to turn my life around. I got involved with church, joined an AA program, and am currently rehabilitated, and made an effort to try to open up to people around me. One such day, dealing with the latter, I was on an evening jog around the city, music blaring in my ears and lungs pounding, when in a split second I found myself running into a man who came out of nowhere with a grocery bag, splitting its contents all over the sidewalk. I apologized profusely, helping the man pick up all his groceries, and insisted on carrying the loose items to his vehicle. That's when we held out hands and I got introduced to Lenny. We talked at his car for a few minutes, where I figured out he was an avid Cardinals fan also, and decided to exchange numbers to, soon permitting, get together for a game. That night, after getting home and showering, I was surprised to find a text from Lenny already, with invitation to see a game at his place. I didn't have any plans, so readily agreed. The following 2 months after were filled with game nights, getting dinner, and hanging out. It felt great to have a friend, and in spite of it seeming a little strange, we had even made copies of each other's house keys, since I would occasionally go out of town for work, and he could feed my German Shepherd or vice versa. Lenny convinced me to finally join a dating website to get myself back out there. He said it's worked for him and would be just what I needed. I joined and got to talking to an attractive redhead in her late 30s whose name was Mary. We hit it off and surprisingly seemed to be interested in all the same things. I finally asked her out, and we set a date to go out the following Friday night. When the night was approaching, Lenny was out of town, suspecting to be back the following night. I realized I had lent him my dress shirt and needed it back before the date. We were close enough I knew he wouldn't mind me dropping by his place to grab it. After I arrived at his 2-story townhouse, I went inside, and not finding the shirt in his laundry room, went upstairs to his bedroom to grab it. I'd never been upstairs before, and the layout was rather strange. I saw there was an adjoining room to the master, which I assumed to be his closet where it was kept, but to my confusement when I opened the door to find pictures littering the walls and a corkboard of lists and information. When turning on the lights, to my horror, they were all photos of me, and information about my daily routines, likes and dislikes, where I shopped, ate, and even the type of women I was attracted to. The pictures were mainly of me running, taken from different angles and views, like from inside a restaurant or behind a newspaper. In the room was a laptop, and I opened it to find the dating website with Mary's account on it, but the user being the account holder. I was terrified and immediately flew out of the house after realizing our friendship had been planned out from the very beginning, when he ran into me with the groceries, to recently trying to catfish me with a fake dating account. I started becoming paranoid, knowing he knew exactly where I lived and all the other information he had gathered. So I broke my lease and moved towns with the prayer that he never finds me. I have been able to move on with my life and don't want to live in fear, but because of this experience have had a really hard time making connections with people and have been tempted to start drinking again. I recently bought a gun out of paranoia and will post an update if he once again tries to find me.